Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. All that our OP did was a small redirect, and silly coworker got herself into trouble. Beautiful, a work of art, perfect example of the glass houses adage. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Point out that I'm not working, will you? I work in an office with a pretty cool boss. If we have nothing to do, he's perfectly fine with us browsing the internet so long as emails are answered when they come in and the phones are not left to ring. There are only 6 of us in the office, less before Christmas, when this story takes place, due to people using the last of their leave. Anyways, I have to be a couple of hours earlier than my workmates on certain days, which means that when we're quiet, like before Christmas, I have normally completed all my work before they arrive. So there I am, minding my own business, browsing the internet at about 9:30, when Mrs. Stick My Nose Into Everyone's Business, aka Mrs. S, shouts, "Oh, must be lovely doing some online Christmas shopping this early in the day," throwaway at me. I just turn around and tell her that I've done everything I can do. She smirks and gets back to her work. B. I sit there for the next hour or so, not very happy bunny. It's not that she would have got me in trouble with the boss. He knows I work hard, as my Christmas bonus proved. It was just the fact that she thought she might get me into trouble. So I plotted. My boss may be a cool guy about going on the internet. One thing he's not so cool about is people using the printer for personal reasons. I happen to know Mrs. S likes to spend most of her afternoons browsing recipe websites, saving them onto Word, and then printing page after page off. She, of course, stands by the printer as she's doing this so she can grab the small novel quickly before anyone else can. She's only slipped up once when she must have pressed print the same time her phone rang. I was passing the printer, noticed the reams printing off, and had a look at what they were. So I decide that I'll screw her over royally by diverting her prints to the printer in my boss's office. I waited for 3 days before I was in the office by myself at lunchtime so I could divert all her prints there. It was worth it. She must not have printed any recipes off for a while, so she had a good few pages worth ready to go. She pressed print and practically ran to the printer, as is her way. Nothing. Checks the paper. Yeah, no problem there. All the while, I'm watching, trying to suppress a giggle. As she's about to turn back to her desk, I imagine to double-check she did press print, my boss walks out of his office. I would guesstimate about 15 to 20 pages of recipes in glorious color in his hand. He looks at Mrs. S. "These are yours, I assume?" She goes bright pink, and he asks her into his office. I don't know what was said, but she didn't look happy when she went back to her desk. Don't try to get me into trouble. I will get you into trouble. She should have minded her own business and got what she deserved. This satisfies my daily need for juicy revenge. Thank you. And our second story. Entitled woman. The food was horrible. Me. But you ate it all? This is about my time as a waitress when I worked at Saltgrass Steakhouse and thought I'd share. EW, entitled woman. Me, M, manager. This was a few years ago, and I'd been at this particular restaurant for a little over a year at this point. I never had a wrong order and knew the menu like the back of my hand, and I really loved working there since it was more pricey than some places, so we tended to attract better tippers. It was close to the end of my shift as a couple walked in. My replacement wasn't there yet, so I thought, why not? One last table for the day. I greeted them politely, and they ordered some smothered cheese fries and some soda, and later got some double pork chops and chicken fried steak. I remember because it was just a good day. I checked on them periodically, making sure their drinks were always full, or if they needed anything else, made sure their food was okay, to which they replied that it was great. I noticed that they had cleaned their plates, not a single thing left on them, and as I was taking them away, I asked if they wanted some dessert. They said no, so I proceeded to drop off the check, and all of a sudden their attitude went sour at this point. EW, I want to see your manager. Me, okay, but can I ask what the problem is? I might be able to help. Usually I could help if there was any problem, although I couldn't think of what it was. EW, this was the worst food I have ever eaten. I'm not paying for this. I want it for free. She was actually pretty loud, and I was grateful the restaurant wasn't busy because I hated when customers made a scene and disturbed the other diners. Me, okay, I'll get my manager then. I purposely walk by the podium and tell the hostess to not let these people D&D, which in our store meant dine and dash. Just funny restaurant language for us. Thankfully, my manager got out of her office in a flash, knowing leaving while they weren't being watched was probably what they were waiting for, and sure enough, our great host was blocking them from leaving at that exact moment. M. Excuse me, folks, but you haven't paid your bill. You need to pay before leaving, she said, going to the doors as well. She had stopped people from just walking out on the check many times before, so this was nothing new to her at all. EW. But the food was horrible. You expect us to pay for horrible food and service? She looked at me when she said that, obviously lying, but there was no point in defending myself. My manager knew I was good at my job, and she's heard it all before. M. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way. If I may ask, though, if it was so horrible, why did you eat it all? Once you finish your meal, there's nothing I can do to fix it, and even if it was horrible, we have a no comp. Comping a meal is what we do to give it for free policy, so regardless, you'll be paying your bill, she said sternly. Our food was expensive. They had spent a little over $100, so there was no way she was letting them walk out on us. EW. You can't make us pay for bad food, and we're in a hurry, which is why we ate it all because we didn't have time for you to make it better. The food here's always terrible anyway, she said, making a motion to leave, but my manager didn't even flinch, which seemed to surprise the woman, as if people just magically moved out of her way all the time. M. Ma'am, I can call the police and have you arrested for theft. Just because you didn't like it doesn't matter. You ate it regardless, and now you need to pay for it. Now, do I need to call the police who are literally 2 minutes away? You could honestly see the police station from out the restaurant windows, or will you be paying your bill? EW. But it's not stealing. It's only food after all. She began to yell again and whine about it. I will never understand people who think that eating and not paying is not stealing. Just because you consume the product doesn't mean it's not stealing. If you took food from a supermarket, it's considered stealing. And this is basically the same thing. EW. Fine, but we will never eat here again. I couldn't help but stifle a little laugh at that point. Even if she heard me, I didn't care because I already knew I wasn't getting a tip. After all, they already tried to make a run for it without giving me anything for it, so why would they bother now? My manager led them to the register where they paid, leaving in a huff. I sighed and began to clear the table and noticed my manager had a little smirk on her face as she handed me the receipt. M. Enjoy your 20% gratuity I added to their bill, she said with a smile, walking off. That definitely made my day. After all, they'd signed the bill because they paid with their card, so even if they contested it later, we have proof they approved it. Regardless, my manager did this so I wouldn't be stiff from an entitled table. No one leaves our restaurant without paying. We'll honestly bend over backward to make you happy, but you will be paying in the end. I really don't get people. If the food's so horrible, then either say something beforehand or pay and then don't come back to the restaurant. Not that hard. Why cause an effing scene anyway? So embarrassing. And our last story. Told an elderly woman and her son to F off and pound sand. Obligatory on-mobile statements, please excuse errors. DV stands for Disabled Veteran. It's the same thing as having a disabled placard. Fair warning, it's a long one. I, 35-year-old male, am a disabled veteran. I don't advertise I'm one, but I do have my state's DV, Disabled Veteran plates, that allow me to park in handicap spaces. They performed a transfemoral amputation in '06 due to combat-related injuries, so I have an endoskeletal prosthesis. You, however, wouldn't know it was there unless I rolled my pant leg up. You especially wouldn't know from looking at me from the waist up. I also have a baby face when clean-shaven. This morning, I had to go to the nightmare that is Wally World, Walmart, and was lucky enough to snag one of the close-up handicap parking spaces. I pull in, turn off my car, and before I can even do anything, this elderly woman and her son pull up behind me and start laying on their horn. They were motioning at me, so I thought maybe something was wrong with my vehicle, and they were trying to signal me, so I got out of my car to check with them. They roll down their window, and the son starts yelling, "You can't park there! That's illegal! If your handicapped person isn't with you, you need to move!" The mother chimes in with this whole shame on you for using someone else's benefits, not verbatim. I say, sir, I have every right to park here as I am disabled. I pointed to my DV plates to emphasize this. Then he yells, yelling because of the motor running, I assume, even if you have some disability, that tone where they don't believe you, it's pretty clear you have no issues walking, what the F ever. His mom adds, you're younger than me. The right thing to do is for you to give up that spot to someone who really needs it. Admittedly, my temper was starting to get up, so I said, ma'am, sir, if you effing think I broke the law, call the effing cops. I'll gladly wait for them to sort this effing crap out. And if you don't want to do that, then you can effing pound sand. I got here first, so F off. I leave and go inside thinking it's over. I'm in the store maybe 20 minutes when the woman and her son come up with a Walmart security guard and a cop, and they start interrogating me in the aisle asking if I had accosted this lady and her son. I start trying to tell my side of things, but son butts in saying he doesn't look disabled at all. I'd had enough, so jerk up my pant leg so they can see the lower part of my prosthesis and say, is this disabled enough? The security guard apologizes but adds, well, you should have just shown them to begin with instead of being an a-hole about it. I was so PO'd, I just ended up leaving the store. Now that I've calmed down, maybe I was the a-hole here, but my wife says I wasn't, and that security guard and everyone else was in the wrong. Edit. For context, the cop never spoke to me. I assume he was there to make sure things didn't escalate. After the altercation, though, as I was walking away, the cop spoke to the security guard. For all I know, he gave him a come to Jesus talk. Edit 2. Some days I do have trouble with walking in pain. There's no way to predict what days I will have PLP, phantom limb pains. Walking further distances tends to spike it. Then it can last a few seconds, a few minutes, hours. I also have extreme lower back pain that, when it gets bad enough, I have to use my cane. These things are never entirely alleviated by the shorter distance, but it does help. Your disability is nobody's business but your own. You're not the a-hole for telling them to F off and walking away. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.